today on Pinball Workshop, we're talking about how to restore cabinet legs for pinball machines. Whenever you start doing this, the first thing is figuring out kind of the quality of them. Is it just rusty, surface rust, or is there something with the integrity of the leg that's been compromised, either bent awkwardly or a hole's been drilled out? You'll find a little bit of everything, but these all seem to be pretty good. A little bit of surface rub internally, but one thing you're going to always notice on older games is the leg levelers. They're usually rusted. They've been broken out. Some I've seen waterlogged. So today what we're going to do is remove all these leg levelers and get everything ready for the Evaporust bath that they're all going to sit in for a couple days. So let's get started. To begin working on these leg levelers, I've got a variety of crescent wrenches, some vice grips, some WD-40 if they've got some locking bolts that are stuck, and then finally a butane torch to get things really hot to try to remove them as well. So got a long road ahead of me, so it's time to get these meat removed. All right, 1 down, 7 more to go. All right, so it's been a little bit of time, but you can see here now I've got all of these leg levelers off. In fact, one of them, in a couple of different pieces, this guy was so rusted on that it really needed a lot of flames, a lot of WD-40. In fact, it actually broke in a socket, and I was able to kind of get this started and get it off. So now what I have are all the legs. So I went ahead and just get a light cleaning. I'm not looking for anything too insane. What I'm going to start doing is I'm going to get my Evaporust going, and let me show you how that works. All right, so I've got my legs ready. I got the leg levelers removed. I also now have all my leg bolts. So the one thing I haven't covered yet is about how to use kind of the thing that I think is the most magical thing in the pinball restore community is Evaporust. So what I have here is a 3-inch piece of PVC. What does this stand? About 4 feet tall, that I bought at just a local hardware store. And then I bought these temporary plugs for either end. And the reason why I did that is because then I can easily clean this out when it gets really dirty, because it will. First thing I'll do is I'll take all my 16 leg bolts. You can see here that the leg bolts have a variety of different, we've got some with rust, some that have been, doesn't look great. So before I even look at any of these in terms of looking at the threads, make sure the threads are okay, I'm just going to clean them because it doesn't cost me any time to clean them. So first thing I'll do is just drop these in. Once those are in, I'll start gathering my legs. So I should have enough to put all these legs in at once. I will stack them to put them in. I find that the Evaporust will still even get through them even if I stack accordingly. But I'm going to put all 8 legs in. And I'm going to put them just like this into here. All right. So now that they're in, it's also pretty heavy. I'm going to start putting in my Evaporust. So I buy Evaporust. Make sure I get one that is the one that's open. I have a lot of Evaporust gallon jugs. So I actually have 4 gallons of this stuff because you will lose some over time just because of the transfer of back and forth. And also it will lose a little bit of its potency over time. But all I do now is just fill this up. So that's the first gallon. It usually takes 2 gallons. Sometimes they'll take a little extra, but put that one back. I'm going to grab a new one. So this is an unopened bottle of Evaporust. Go ahead and you can see the color difference there with the newer bottle. More of a yellow, let's say urine color. So I'm just going to fill that up. Now I'm just looking down into the pipe to make sure that all the legs have been covered. I'll bring the camera over here in a minute, but it's already starting to fizzle and whatnot. The great thing about Evaporust is that it's completely safe. The fumes are safe. It can get on your skin. It's a very easy thing. There's no acid. So this is something I don't even wear gloves on. Just a quick wash of the hands works great. So after I've got that in here, I just put my plug on. Get nice and tight. Give it a little shake. There we go. Now I can kind of sit this over in the corner. I'll probably give this about 3 days, just because of the amount of legs that are in there. I'll come by every once in a while and just give it a good shake. Just kind of make sure the rust is falling to the bottom of the pipe. And yeah, I'll just sit this back. Oh, it's super heavy now. Sit this back in the corner. Make sure that it's nice and secure. One thing I just want to show you is that you can do this on a variety of different pipes. So I've got here just a 3-inch pipe that I can put into here. So if I'm doing something smaller project and I don't need to get that big 4-inch pipe out, just a smaller pipe with the similar temporary plug. So now what we'll just have to do is wait for the legs to get ready, and then we'll move on to our next step.
It's been about 3 days on the Evaporust with the 2 sets of legs and the bolts in this solution. So now I'm going to use my trusty bucket here to start to dump the Evaporust back into. But even though I've got the Evaporust out right now, I've got a couple of coin boxes that I'm going to go ahead and clean as well. So this is going to show you a little bit of the power of Evaporust outside of the legs that we fixed already. So let's get the Evaporust out, get the legs out, get them cleaned, and see what they look like. And then we'll get this stuff in the solution as well. now we've got to wipe the legs down, get all the vapor rust off of them, and see how they turned out. We're back down here in the workshop, and now I've got the final assembly piece to rebuild the Paragon legs. In this case, legs I'm going to use for Paragon. So the last thing that we need is our new leg levelers. I use 2 different sizes, but to be fair, there's people who do this a lot of different ways. So I'm sure if you ask 100 people, there's 100 different ways that they do it. But I use the 2 inches for the front and the 3 inches for the back. You can buy these on eBay. They're relatively cheap. I buy a whole bunch of them and keep them in my my workshop bin. I use the 3/8, just a 3/8 inch nut to put at the bottom, just in case we get stuck in the bottom where I want to try to tighten it. I can do that. You could also put a nut on the top if you want to, make sure it's completely tight as well. And then a 3 inch, I'm going to move this down, screw it in the leg, and then tighten it appropriately. So we'll do a couple legs to show you how that looks like, and then we'll stick the legs back on the Paragon. Now, since these legs are used, and I don't have any reason to, at this point, to refurbish them any. I'm not painting or using any type of extra refurbishment right now. There are times where I'll sandblast these or get them powder coated, but for this machine, this is a pretty pretty easy refurbishment Paragon. Doesn't necessarily. This Paragon is not going to go for a lot of money, so really it's just for the love of the hobby to get this back into shape. So we got the leg that I chose to be one of the front legs, which is one of the nicer front legs. I went ahead and screwed in the leg all the way, and yeah, now it's ready to go. I'll choose one of the worst legs. I think it's actually the worst leg of it to do the back. And so what I'll do is just kind of start the leg. Maybe go in 3 or 4 turns on the other side, and then lock. So I always start something like this. In my workshop, and kind of how I set my games up, I have a pretty aggressive stance that I like games on. So I will usually have this type of setup on my back leg. Now I will tell you that if you are transporting a game, if you're transporting a game, you always want to make sure to take your legs and take them all the way in. So if you're ever transporting a game with the legs on, which I've only done that once when I sold a game, but you always want to make sure to take the legs, screw them all the way in. You don't want to have all that weight on this while it's moving, and there could be a potential lot of vibrations. But now it's in there tight, threaded in here, about 2 or 3 threads through, and then the nut here just hand tightened for now. So let's go ahead. We'll complete the. I'll go ahead and complete the other 2 legs, and then we'll put the legs on the Paragon. So I've got one of my front legs here. I've got my 2 bolts that I've cleaned, and I've got my drill with my 9/16 socket on there. Now, sometimes I don't use a impact drill to put legs on, especially if I'm working with either legs that have been powder coated or epoxy painted, or bolts that have the heads powder coated or epoxy. So a really interesting top tip is that if you have bolts that you're wanting to protect from maybe paint that's been applied there or powder coating, you go a size up to 3/8 of 5/8 on your socket, and then actually stick in like a microfiber cloth inside the socket. And then that will fit over the bolt, and then you'll be able to tighten it. But today, we don't have to worry about that. So let's get our first leg connected. One down. 3 more to go. Now we'll put the back legs on. Another interesting tip that if you're ever finding an old machine and you may have a leg that maybe it's gotten scratched really bad or the paint's chipping, always put that leg in the back. That's going to be the one that you're never going to see, especially if the machine is butted up against the back of a wall. So always feel free to rotate them around. In these eras of machines, all the legs are the same sizes. I'm trying to think. Yeah, there was a couple machines, some System 9 machines that actually had some shorter legs in the front and longer legs in the back. But really, as long as you stay with the legs that came with the machine, they're all, I think, 27 and 1/8 inch, except for like the weird Gottliebs that are like 31 inches. But most of the time, you'll find the same legs. So let's put these on. All right, got the legs on, so now we'll just take our metal sawhorses down, and now the game will be able to be standing on its own legs. And there we go. Now we've got our refurbished legs, rust-free. We've got our bolts that are rust-free and looking pretty shiny. So this is kind of the point where, it's good enough now to come back and work on the machine. Doesn't mean that I'm necessarily done with the legs. I still may be able to repair them, refurbish them, repaint them, powder coat them later. But at least I now can start with it clean from basically the legs into the pinball machine. So great way to do that. Everyone takes kind of their own approach to that. But this is the kind of the key place that I start when trying to repair a machine. So with that, we'll get back to talking about this Paragon, getting it up and going, and some other key videos coming up later. So for us, that's going to do us for now. We'll see you guys next time.